The next thing that happens here is we've got a bearing that actually runs around this clutch. So I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on this bearing. Now this bearing does not get oiled through the engine. It gets oiled through the oiler for the chain. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give us some good lubrication on it to get us started. Now the next thing that I'm going to put on is going to be this clutch. And it goes down in here and slides over this bearing and slides into this band, and it needs to line up, this little groove right here needs to line up with this piece for our oiler. Now this can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge because you got to be able to see down in there to get this put together exactly right. We're going to try it without the bearing first and see. And what I've got here is I've got this brake trying to hold me up here on this upper end. And there we've got it set in place. And we'll put that bearing in. And we'll put this sprocket in. That's what drives our chain. And these sprockets are reversible. And you should reverse them every once in a while so that they wear equally. And then we'll put this washer in. And then we'll take this little snap ring right here and we'll push it into place. All right, there's that back together. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a keyway. So this crankshaft, the keyway goes right here, and that lines up with this groove right here on the flywheel or magneto, and that keeps our spark timing where it is supposed to be. So we'll put the keyway in this and we'll put this magneto on there and we will tighten it down, and then we'll move on to the next thing. So while I have this brake apart, while I'm going back together, I want to show you how this brake works. So this band wraps around this drum right here and locks it in place. And that keeps the chain from moving. Now down in here, there's a lever. And that lever has a spring that's holding it up. Now on this brake handle, right down in here, there's a little curve. So as you pull this brake handle back, it kicks this piece down and kicks this arm into place. As you push this forward, it kicks this back down and allows this spring to pull this lever right here, which pulls this band tight around this drum. So we pull it back, it locks it in place, the drum will spin. We push it forward, it lets this release, this spring pulls this band against this drum and locks it in place. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and put the covers and everything on top of this, how they go. So this cover is going to go right in here, just like this. And then we'll put a couple of screws in it. And I'm going to bring you back in just a little while. And we are going to put the piston and then we'll put the cylinder together. So we're going to go ahead and put the rings on this piston. Now, if you look at these rings, they have a groove cut in them right here. And that groove goes right around that little pin right there in the piston. So what we're going to want to do is we'll start our ring. And we'll get our ring right down in that groove. And the gap in that ring will go right over that little pin. Now, our top piston's going to be basically the same thing. We'll start it right there. And we'll work our way around very carefully, trying not to scratch anything. And we'll work that into the groove. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put this piston connecting to this connecting rod. Now, this is a full floating piston, which means that this wrist pin does not fit solid in any part of it. It's allowed to move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put me just a little bit of oil in this where the wrist pin goes right here. And I'm going to take one of these circlips right here and I'm going to put it in place. And I'll just take my needle nose pliers and put a little bit of pressure on it right there, and it'll snap right into that groove. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this needle bearing and I'm going to set it in the connecting rod, right where the wrist pin goes. Then I am going to take this piston. You see it's got an arrow on it pointing towards the front of the saw. You can plainly see the arrow right there. We're going to take that and we're going to set it right up here. And then we're going to put our wrist pin in. Now the wrist pin goes through the piston. It goes through the connecting rod. I'm going to set this up like this so I can look right through here and get my piston and my connecting rod lined up so that my wrist pin will go through it. Then I'm going to push this in place, and I'm going to go ahead and put this other circlip in place. Sometimes these things can be a bit of a challenge. And then we're going to take a screwdriver and we're going to make sure that these little clips are all the way in place. Now, that piston moves freely. We have our piston facing the right direction. We're going to make sure that we line up our little pins. And then what we'll do, I've already set my gasket in here in place. I'm going to put just a little oil in this cylinder. Now you can see that this cylinder has a bevel right here. That's to help us get our rings in. So what we're going to do, we're just going to start this piston. And then we're going to very gently work our way around to these rings. I'm going to try and get this where I can see it a little bit better. Got to find my pin for that top ring. There it is, right there. Okay, there's that first ring in place. Now we've got to find our second pin. And it's back here a little ways, which means that we need to move this ring back. So that it'll line up with that groove right there. And then we can start that ring into the cylinder. Take our screwdriver, just gently work our way around. Set our gasket in place. There, we've got it in place. And we'll just run that all the way down. Make sure that we line our gasket up. Get that pushed all the way down where it belongs. Now we're going to take our cylinder bolts and we're going to bolt this cylinder down. And then I will bring you back when we've got it bolted down. So this is an aftermarket cylinder that we've put on this chainsaw. And this cylinder has a compression release, which means that it has a hole drilled in the cylinder. So we have to put this in here. So we're going to go ahead and put this in here and tighten it down. Although it'll probably never get used. I might set this up. I might drill a hole in the top cover so that it can be pushed if it needs to. The way this is designed is you push this button down and it opens up this valve, and as soon as you start to turn the engine, it closes it back up. It just releases compression. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And then I think we're going to go ahead and put the case assembly together, get the carburetor put on. I think I'll leave putting this stuff on until last. And then I will also leave this side. Now this coil pack on this works together with this magneto to create the energy for spark. And I am going to, the gap on this should be somewhere between 12 and 16. This card right here is 14 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to run that in there just like that. And I've got it set up right on the magnets. And then I'm going to loosen these screws. And let that pull right up against the magneto just like it just now did. And then I'm going to tighten these screws back down. And that should give me my air gap. I'm going to spin this around and make sure that we have clearance, and that works out. So when we put our side case on, we will hook up to right here with our kill switch, and that's what shuts this down. So I'm going to go ahead and put this compression release in, and then I will probably put the case together off camera. Thanks for spending a little time with us here in the man cave. Appreciate you watching our videos. Please hit the like or subscribe buttons, and also leave comments. I will try and respond to your comments, and leave me ideas for videos and I will try and make them happen.